Yo, what's up, YouTube? This is your boy Alex. I am back. Today is Sunday. Happy Easter to everyone. Now, this is a very special limited edition episode of Sex Game. It is not going to be talking about sex and dating because we're taking a hiatus. We're taking a break and we're freshening up our YouTube content. So, for those that were expecting me to talk about sex and dating, just sit back and relax. Sometime later this week, when I get off my hiatus with, my new content and go back to my original content, then you'll get some episodes of Sex and Dating that actually talks about sex and dating. Here today, in this limited edition episode, we're going to be talking about 14 of the best, well, in this case, I'm going to say Sex Game, for the top 14 greatest action movies of all times. Not the best. There's a difference between the best and the greatest. We're talking about the greatest action-packed movies of all times in Hollywood movie cinema history. Now, this was a very complicated and difficult list to create, like the other one where I talked about the greatest movies of all times. That was as difficult as it can get. This one was difficult, but not as the last one. The last one was extremely difficult because there were so many movies that should have been on the list, and they was not. This one was a little bit easier than the last one, but still difficult in the sense that when you hear the names of these movies, you might try to figure out why these are on the list and why some of the more recent movies of today didn't make the list. So, and plus I have one for television, and I got one for superheroes, where I might make a sequel and call it the greatest action slash superhero movies of all time. So there will be more sequels and a part 2 and a part 3 if the videos are that well received. So I want to say thank you to my audience, my fan base, my loyal subscribers, because 24 hours ago, my camera malfunctioned on me. Like, it literally malfunctioned, and it cut the video into 5 parts. And that might have not been easy because for the first day, nobody really was watching the video. And then I thought I was the only one. And then John Capia had a similar situation where he was trying to do a 12-hour marathon on the John Capia show, and it ended up being 5 to 7 hours. And then, he was trying to raise some money for awareness. And unfortunately, he did not meet his goals, and he was a little disappointed. I was a little shocked that he went from number 1 to like number 2. So he was in number 1 for like almost a month, and then he got knocked out to number 2. If you look at the top 5 YouTubers, he's high on that list. So it's just unfortunate. So I give the man a shout out, give the man his respect, his credit, his due. He worked his butt off. He did the best he could, raising $5,000. His goal was to actually get more than that, but it crashed and burned at 5,000. He said he'll do better next time, and he will do better, as I will do better with my content. He apologized for the video being cut in half. I apologize for my videos yesterday being cut in half. Here, you're going to get an actual full-blown 20 to 25, maybe 30-minute video if it don't cut off. Like I said, expect in the summertime, somewhere in late July, early August, I actually update my camera system and give you a better quality camera, because you guys deserve nothing but the best of the best. And it's my job to give you the best content ever. No half-ass, no lazy, give you the best, because that's what you deserve, is the best. So you will get the best. You just might have to wait a little longer than anticipated, but you will get the best of the best. When I say best quality, you will know it. And I'm talking about better than this quality. This quality is okay, but we could do a little better than this. Now, the name of the title of the video is called Sex Game, the top 14 greatest action movies of all times. It's only 14 slots, so it's unfortunate if your movie's not named on this list. I apologize, and I will make a part 2 and a part 3 if this video is well received, and the vast majority of my videos so far have been very well received. So let's get on it with no further interruptions. Coming in at number 14 is X-Men 2. Now, I know some people expect this movie to be much, much higher on the list. What I loved about the sequel of X-Men, that it was very well written, very well directed, very well produced, and it was better than the first film. There were some complaints with the first film. There was not enough action, not enough storyline. This was the only time that they made a team up movie have more action, more excitement, with more story. There was more backstory to Charles Xavier and Magneto's grudge, the history that they had with William Stryker, and we saw more of Logan, aka Wolverine's backstory. The fact that we got to see how the adamantium steel was into his body and how he became Weapon X and how his advanced healing powers allow him to survive way beyond, the limit of what a human can withstand. And then to add new characters, throw in Nightcrawler. We got to see Rogue, use her powers more. We got to see Iceman use his powers a little bit more. We got to see Storm. We got to see Jean Grey and Cyclops. We got to see other characters like Mystique. This was a very well action-packed movie. What I loved about it is that Hugh Jackman was to put on 35 pounds of muscle, and he was like 235 pounds, like the biggest at the time. On record, it was the biggest that an actor had ever put on for a comic book character. Like, he literally transformed into the Wolverine. Like, he looked bigger in the second movie than he did in the first movie. And some of the best fighting scenes were actually his fighting scenes. That incredible, intense scene where they break into the mansion and you could see this one little boy with this powerful scream to knock everybody out unconscious, where Wolverine came in and took some of those soldiers out. And that was an intense scene because we got to see the true Wolverine, not him holding back, not him showing us 50%. We actually got to see him actually go 100% in that movie because he was bigger, he was stronger, he was ripped. He really looked like the Wolverine from the comic books. And that's why the movie was so much more better. Every time when it came to the fighting, it was Wolverine doing all your action scenes were Wolverine. There were other characters like Storm, which a lot of people were upset with because she got from a main role to a supporting role, but she did have her moments in that movie. Halle Berry, where she would destroy the missiles, Jean Grey, and then you see they got saved by Magneto. So the characters did have their moments. When Magneto escaped and broke out of prison, but almost all of your fighting scenes for all the action was Wolverine. And he made X-Men 2 a better film because one of the best fighting scenes towards the end of the movie is where he fights, the female version of himself. And then to see, Magneto have to be the one to turn Charles, to turn against the humans with that device, and then Storm had to save Charles. So it made every character become involved. It wasn't, oh, it's just one character or two or three characters. It's everyone fighting for their survival. So that's what made X-Men 2 a better action-packed movie. So it's the greatest sequel to the original, and it's also a superhero movie, but it's also great. X-Men, the saga has its good movies and its bad movies. X-Men 2 is high on everyone's list of best sequel and greatest sequel because it lived up to the expectations and it kind of surpassed the original. Now, say what you will about, X-Men 3 and all the others that came after, but this was on a high level. Like, we had never seen it. It wouldn't be until we see X-Men First Class that they would greatly compare X-Men 2 to X-Men First Class. So that's why this is number 14. I know some going to say it should be rated even higher than number 14. It is what it is. Coming in at number 13 is Creed 2. I know some people are spitting out their Coca-Cola, their Pepsi, their Sprite, their 7-Up. Nobody drinks Sierra Mist, apple juice, orange juice, coffee or tea, trying to figure out how is this number 13. Well, the sequel to Creed is just like the first movie of X-Men. The first film had action in it, but a lot of people complained there was too much talking, there wasn't enough story, enough backstory, and that the first film was too much like the first Rocky film. So what they did in Creed 2 was they brought in more fights. He fought the son of Drago twice. They had him fight the guy that took his championship belt. They showed more training montages. They showed more backstory, more story. They made the characters more vocal, more get involved. They had the characters interact more. They showed more from the original films without taking too much away from what the second one was about. And that's what made Creed 2 better than the first film. More action, more excitement. And it made Michael B. Jordan challenge himself more as an actor. So you got to see more Creed in Michael B. Jordan than you did in the first film. And it's so action packed that every time I pop out my DVD, I always look at Creed 2 as better than the first movie. Not that the first movie is not good, the second one is just better than the first one because there's more fighting, there's more action. Coming in at number 12 is 1995's Mortal Kombat. For years and years, Hollywood struggled with taking video games and animes and turning them into television or film adaptations. And Mortal Kombat was kind of like that first or second or third video game that they had turned into a live action. To have to get the characters from the video games and then get the actors to resemble the characters from the video game was one of the biggest challenges. And to this day, everyone thinks of the first Mortal Kombat. What makes this an action packed movie is the martial arts, the story of good versus evil, the idea that three strangers would be picked by a thunder god to come save the earth. And when you hear that man's voice in the background when they hit that theme song for the trailers, Mortal Kombat! It's the stuff of legends. To this day, you got people who still yell that out because a lot of people grew up playing Mortal Kombat, the video games. You got people who grew up playing Street Fighter 2, but Mortal Kombat kind of made it cool to say you could play the video games and turn this into a live action. They got two movies, a television show, a web series 20 years later. And it's getting a reboot. So there's something about Mortal Kombat that sells itself as a great action movie. Now, is it perfect? No. Does Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 have production problems? Most definitely. Is these movies a little cheesy and over the top at times? Yes. Could the characters been a little bit designed a little bit better? Yes. Could there have been better actors to play these characters? Yes. This is why we're getting the reboot, to answer all those questions. But that first Mortal Kombat film, you'll never forget it. The way the story was done, the way that you could feel the emotion from these characters. Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Reptile, Liu Kang, Shang Tsung, Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage. It made sure that they did pay attention to how the actors should resemble these characters. They didn't just pick anybody. So the reboot should do something similar and will answer all those questions. Like I said, they did have production problems, and they're not perfect. They're a little cheesy, a little over the top, but they will be better. Coming in at number 11 is The Bourne Identity. This movie was made in 2001 or 2002. To have Matt Damon play a CIA operative who went rogue and is fighting, basically the government in this movie, and they have the idea that he has to take on a bunch of assassins because he forgot his memory and he don't know why they're coming after him in Trenchstone. The first movie is action packed. It's just riddled with action. Every time you try to go to the restroom, there's another fighting sequence. Somebody falling off the roof. There's the chase. He's up the stairs, down the stairs. He jumps out of a building. He go in there and do some martial arts. He show he's military trained. He's listening to conversations. Every time you turn around, there's twists and turns in this movie. And it's not to the final ending to the movie that he finds out there's more to it than just his identity. Bourne Identity 2, a lot of people complain it was too much talking. Like, people complain the first half there was action, and then the rest of the movie it was just too much backstory. And when it got to Bourne Identity 3, Bourne Supremacy, they went back to all the action because people love the first movie. Say what you will about Bourne Identity 2, and I know some people do not like the fourth one, Bourne Legacy, and it's why you got Bourne 5 because of the action. So it's the Bourne Identity movie. To me, it's on the same level as James Bond and Mission Impossible if you like, spy stuff. Coming in at number 10 is Blade. Now, Wesley Snipes' Blade will always go down in history as the best action movie, best superhero movie, and just in general, the best great movie for Marvel. At that time, movies like Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, The Avengers, movies like that had not came yet. That was like 10 years down the road. And if it wasn't for Blade, this one movie called Blade, you would have never got Iron Man. You would have never got Captain America, Thor, Hulk, the Avengers. You would have never got none of the Avenger movies. You would have never got Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Spider. You would have never got none of those movies in the MCU. It all started with Blade. Marvel wasn't sure if Blade was going to be a sure thing, and it was. That iconic scene where Wesley Snipes comes into the nightclub and all the vampires are scared and terrified. It's him. It's the Daywalker. And that smile that Wesley Snipes had as Blade, and then the fact that he would just take them out with a samurai sword, badass leather jacket, badass Chevy Camaro car, sunglasses with the flap top, badass. And the way that he choreographed his martial arts. Now, say what you will about Blade 2 and Blade 3 being okay, average films, but the first film, fast forward 20 years later, everyone loves that first Blade film. I don't care if you don't read comic books, you don't watch any Marvel movies. You ask anybody in those 20 years, out of all the three Blade films with Wesley Snipes, what is by far the best one? People are going to say Blade 1. You're not going to hear too many people say Blade 2. They might remember Blade 2. And nobody really remembers Blade 3. There was 3 movies in the trilogy. There was a Blade television show. But nobody even remembers the TV show. People can barely remember the second and the third movie. But they do know there was a first Blade film with Wesley Snipes. And Marvel is going to give us a Blade reboot, so that's why Blade is on this list. Coming in at number 9, Captain America Civil War. Not Civil War, my bad. I know what y'all thinking, Captain America Winter Soldier. Now, the first Captain America film had a lot of production problems. There was a lot of issues with that first film. I mean, it still was a good, fun, enjoyable film. The second one, it was taken very serious because they threw in politics, so it became a geopolitic thriller. The idea that there's an assassination. You got Super Soldier versus Super Soldier. You got Black Widow in there. You got Nick Fury. You got Crossbones. You got a clone of Red Skull. What could possibly you ask for more in a Captain America sequel? And the fact that they even threw in a mixed martial arts fighter. Gerald C. Pierre was in this movie. And the sequel was better than the first one. More fighting, more action, more story. You introduced Falcon. So this was so jam-packed full of action, like X-Men 2, it surpasses the first movie and it became great. When people ask, out of all the 3 movies of Captain America, what is everyone's favorite? You notice people say the first film is my least favorite film, Captain America, First Avenger, but you notice people always say between Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Civil War, they always try to say it's either a tie, or they say Winter Soldier's better than Civil War, or you hear them say Civil War is better than Winter Soldier. Both movies were 2.5 hours. Both movies, in my opinion, are on the same competitive level, and both films surpassed the original. What more could you ask for? And plus, it had an end credit to the second Avenger film. So, yeah. Coming in at number 8 is Wonder Woman. For years, my mom wanted a Wonder Woman live-action movie. For like almost 25 years, they struggled with the idea of making a movie or a television show. And they finally made a movie, and Gal Gadot transformed her body to look like Diana Prince, the Amazon princess that we know as Wonder Woman. Now, when she had her introduction in Batman vs. Superman in 2016, the whole entire best part of that movie was because of Wonder Woman. Nobody cheered for Batman. Nobody cheered for Superman. It was Wonder Woman who got the standing ovation if you watch Batman vs. Superman. Same thing when she got her own movie. It was the same thing. She got the standing ovation. In fact, that was like probably the first female superhero movie in history where it got number one at the box office. People saw the movie 2 times, 3 times, 4 times when this movie came out. And every time you go in the theater, she got the loudest standing ovations. Like it was that serious. And the theme song, when you listen to her theme song, that's what drove me to go see the movie. Like that theme song was badass banging. Like that song right there, it embodies what Wonder Woman is. And they did a great job with casting all the actors to play the characters. You know, they brought in Greek mythology, good versus evil, right versus wrong. You know, they brought in some comedy, some action, and it gave us a chance to see Gal Gadot challenge her range as an actress. In the beginning, people were questioning her ability. Could she play a physical character? You know, she put on some weight. She got in athletic shape. She did the martial arts. She did the acting. She did the weight training. She did the diet. And the challenge was, could she balance that out? And she did. You know, she proved that what you saw in Batman versus Superman was real and wasn't a fluke. You know, she straight out showed that she could do some comedy. There were funny moments in the movie. You know, what would happen if a character like her did not know how to exist in a civilized manner? You know, she didn't want to give her sword to Patty. That was like a funny moment. Then she got serious. You know, then she brought the sex appeal. So she was able to show her range as an actress. And not too many actresses can do that with a character like that. The only actress that could come in and do something like that is Scarlett Johansson. So this was nice to see her on the same level as her. Coming in at number 7 is Avengers Infinity War. If you're talking about action quality, Avengers Infinity War was by far the most anticipated action-packed movie of the year. People had been waiting years for them to get to another Avengers film. After they had Avengers, and of course we know Age of Ultron didn't really live up to expectations, the third one did. You had every character that you possibly could name off in this movie. You had Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, you had the Hulk, you had Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, the Black Widow, War Machine, Falcon. You know, you had Hawkeye. You know, you had Vision, Scarlet Witch. You name the Marvel character that was in this movie. Of course, Nick Fury showed up at the end credits, the signal for Captain Marvel, of course. You had the Guardians of the Galaxy. What more could you have asked for in this movie? You had all the villains, you had all the characters, you had the Black Panther. You know, it doesn't get no better than that. You know, and of course there's Endgame, but this had the most action. It was action packed. Like every time you turn around, you couldn't go to the bathroom. You couldn't even refill your popcorn or your soda because it was like the main event. It was like this is pay-per-view with superheroes badass. Coming in at number 6 is Resident Evil 2 Apocalypse. Now, Resident Evil 2 is not the greatest action saga, but it's by far the most entertaining and action-packed movies. Just the idea that there could be, an event where you got a group of individuals that have to survive and they have to stop a madman scientist from trying to, experiment on people to turn them into super soldiers, but accidentally turns them into something else. And then to have Alice have to be the main character. A lot of the fighting scenes was perfect. I mean, Resident Evil 2 had Nemesis in it, and hey, if a movie got a monster in it, and you got a monster, and you got zombies, and a girl with superpowers, what more could you ask for? Now, part 2 is a little better than the first film. It would have been nice if the storyline for part 2 was part 1 and part 1 was part 2, but either case, you had Nemesis. And that's what made me want to go watch this movie. To this very day, when people ask me what is my favorite Resident Evil movie, even though all the films, they're not that good, but action pack wise, they're very entertaining, I always say the second one. I don't like Resident Evil 3 Extension. I felt that it was a disappointing movie. Resident Evil Afterlife was good. It could have been better. Resident Evil Retribution was my second most favorite because of all the action. and I felt that Juliet Movovich did an even greater job in Retribution. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, I still have mixed emotions because I felt that movie should have actually been a prequel to Resident Evil Apocalypse. Hopefully, with the reboot, they actually do exactly just that. Coming in at number 5, Matrix Reloaded. What else can I say? You see, this is why. See, when it comes to movies like John Wick, The Matrix, Keanu Reeves is the man. I mean, the second one was the best one. When people ask me out of the three Matrix movies, which is the best, right off the back, I say Part 2. Part 1 was a good story. Part 2 had all the action in it. You had so many entertaining characters that I wish that some of those characters could have showed up in the third Matrix movie. Imagine a fight between Neo and the twins in the third movie. We didn't get it. I mean, it just would have been nice had they done that with Matrix 3. But the second one, you know how great that film was. Coming in at number 4, The Dark Knight. The second one, the second Batman film, in fact, was the Batman movie. Now, Batman Begins was the first film, but you have to understand something. A lot of people remember Batman Begins as the first movie in the trilogy, but when it first came out, nobody really wanted to go watch Batman Begins because they was afraid it was going to turn out to be just like Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. And Batman Begins turned out to be just like the first Batman film with Michael Keaton. But the sequel made everyone go watch Batman. People who didn't even watch DC Comics, don't read comic books, don't watch superhero movies because of what happened with Heath Ledger, everyone went to go see that film. And it grossed so much money that to this day, the only movie that was able to match its total and surpass it was The Avengers in 2012. So that had to tell you how significant this sequel was and how you set the bar the way Christopher Nolan did this sequel. Coming in at number 3 is 300. Now, I know people hate the sequel, 300 Rise of an Empire, because some people feel like the story doesn't actually match the events in history. But the first one got quite close to telling the truth. You know, Jerron Butler showed his range as an actor in this movie. And in fact, this resurrected his acting career, actually. Because he had done acting before this, but he hadn't played a big character since Dracula, and this was the next big character. And this movie was so good. It's got rap songs, it's got rock songs, clothes, t-shirts. People go in the gym and think they're King Leonidas. Whenever they play basketball or football or they do weightlifting, they'll always play the theme songs that come from the movie. And they always say his catchphrase because that's how big of a deal 300 was. This is Sparta! That had to tell you why it's number 3. And it had a lot of action in it. Coming in at number 2, and this is a tie. I had a tough one putting this on the list. James Bond, Casino Royale, and tied with Skyfall. You probably might be like, damn, Alex, why 2 James Bond movies got to be tied at number 2? Because when Casino Royale came out, people said that was the most action-packed James Bond out of the whole entire movie franchise since License to Kill and GoldenEye. And for a long time, Casino Royale remake with Daniel Craig was by far the most action-packed James Bond movie of all times until Skyfall came in 2012. And that had as just much action in it as Casino Royale. Some of y'all are going to say it's 50-50. Some of y'all going to hands down say it's the Casino Royale remake that's got more action. Some going to say, nah, Skyfall. I'll let y'all decide which movie tied at number 2 gets ultimately number 2. Coming in at number 1. Can you guys guess what the greatest action-packed movie of all times is? I'll give you a guess. In the 80s and the 90s, it was the biggest phenomenon in science fiction movie history, besides Star Wars and besides Star Trek. This movie came before you got The Matrix, before you got futuristic movies. The Terminator 2 Judgment Day. There is no other action-packed movie before or after its time that could match its storyline, its backstory, its soundtrack, its music, its special effects. Nothing comes close to that. Maybe the Avenger movie in 2012, and the way that they blended this story. Back then, we had IMAX, and James Cameron wanted to go as far as to do 3D. We had 3D back then. If you ever went on a field trip, you remember the days you were in high school and college in the 1980s and 90s, you remember that they took you to an IMAX movie theater that had IMAX on it. And at that time, they weren't putting IMAX or 3D or 2D in movie theaters yet. And when they did, they done it with Terminator 2 Judgment Day. And even to this day, there is no sequel that made the most money. There is no sequel that has been on the same level since. Movies like The Dark Knight, The Matrix Reloaded, The Avengers, they come very close. But not close enough to get number one. Arnold Schwarzenegger comes back for the sequel. You know, James Cameron comes back, first time in history. The director comes back and does the movie. And the sequel does better than the original Terminator film. And the story of John Connor being, friends with a Terminator and a Terminator fighting the liquid metal Terminator, that's the stuff of legends. Now, say what you will about Terminator 3, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis. Say what you will about the rest of the sequels. None of them can match the greatness of